Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. In today's episode, we're thrilled to have a conversation with Shannon, co-owner of Anupaya Cabin Co. Shannon shares her inspiring journey of moving from the bustling city of Montreal to the serene, sleepy beach town of Deep River in eastern Ontario. With a background in running a yoga studio and an online clothing company, Shannon and her husband faced numerous challenges and took numerous risks to create their dream of building a cabin resort. This conversation felt special to me, like it truly came at the right moment with the right person. And I know that everyone wants a lot of helpful details, how to build a cabin, how to finance it, best practices for hosting and marketing. And I like to think that we do a lot of that in a lot of our episodes. But sometimes I think that before all of that, you really have to have the right mindset. Shannon is the perfect person to help us get our minds right in order to get everything else right that comes after that. In this conversation, we talk about working on contentment, how connection with nature has benefited our anxiety, how taking big risks can pay off, but is often a lot harder in our 40s than it was in our 20s, and leaning into your unique personality when building a cabin escape and sharing it with others. I really don't know how to sum this one up well, but I highly recommend that you join us. Let's do it. So I want to just dive in and introduce folks who don't know who you are.
Sure.
Can you tell them who you are? I would love,
Yes.
I always love saying you can use whatever job title you want. And this was where I first fell in love with you, was your job title. So you can feel free to share that if you want, but also where you're located.
Okay, so I am Shan McLagan, and I own a company called Anupaya Cabin Co. And we are in a sleepy little beach town in eastern Ontario called Deep River. So it's in the Ottawa Valley, and eastern Ontario.
Okay.
And
Can you
I
clarify
am
beach real quick? Because you're on a river, right? Or is it ocean? Is it
No,
saltwater?
no, we're on the river, but
Okay.
we have a huge beach, massive, massive beach. And it's like this kind of interesting thing about Deep River and how we landed here is that there's so many beaches everywhere. Like there's like a dozen beaches within like a 20-minute paddle of us, and they're just these like white sand deserted beaches, and nobody's on them. Like nobody even knows about this place. And so yeah, that kind of is what started this whole like journey with tourism here.
How did you
And my
discover it if
well,
nobody knows
my husband's from here.
that?
It's
Okay.
okay. So okay. So we have this. It's there's something called CNL here, which is a research facility. So it was built. There's like this McLean's article called Deep River, almost the perfect town, written like in the 50s about this like cute little weird town. And it was built with with all of these scientists and engineers and physicists from all over the world. So it's like a super super diverse little community, but no one really knew about it. And so it's just this like has been this kind of insulated thing and has been like a little bit hidden. But my husband's from here, so his dad was an engineer. And when we first met, we were living in Montreal, and I was like, I'm never leaving. Like, I'm never leaving the plateau. Like, this is my place. And then he started to bring me out to Deep River, and I remember standing on the beach and being like, you grew up here. Like, what is this place? And so once we had a couple kids, we decided to come on out, and we owned a yoga studio for a long time that we sold a few years ago. But yeah, that's how we landed here.
Yeah. Why
Mhm.
can you remember in that article why it was almost perfect?
Yeah. Okay. It's hilarious. Well, there's nothing to do. That was like the main focus of the
Oh.
article was that like Deep River, and it's so quirky and cute and weird and nerdy. It's like apparently has like the highest concentration of PhDs per capita in Canada. Like it's just, you're like walking down the street and you hear all these little nerds talking about a bunch of shit I don't understand.
Yeah.
Um,
Weird
but
fact, but
all
Durham, North Carolina, where I am right now, has the highest concentration of PhDs per capita in the US.
stop.
Yeah, so I can very much relate to
Oh,
that.
that's so great. Okay,
Yeah.
yes. And in the article, it talked about how there's just like so many clubs here. Like, there's nothing to do. So everyone's making clubs. And I feel like it was a little bit tongue in cheek, but they were like, there's a snail watching club, but then there's also people watching the snail watchers. Like it's just, anyways, it's just a bunch of nerds on the beach, basically.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
then when you started the yoga studio, was that where you
yeah.
are now or was that in Montreal?
No, no, it was so there's like a kind of a bigger city. There's a place called Pembroke, which is like the hub of the valley, and so we were there for a long time. We lived on like a little hobby farm outside of Pembroke, and yeah, we owned a studio for almost 10 years that we sold just before the pandemic.
I feel
And
like this is helpful context because owning some sort of business first does give you some of
yeah,
because what you're doing now isn't just one cabin and we're gonna jump into that. It is like a
yeah,
business. And so having
yeah.
owned one first, you kind of got that experience.
Totally. Yeah, and when we sold it's called White Pine Yoga, we opened Anupaya, which was just like it was like an online clothing company. It was like selling hats and blankets and just like like ethical, sustainable like homeware. And we had no idea what we were doing, and it was a real shit show for real. It was I guess I kind of thought that we could just go from uh like a service-based business to a product-based business like very easily. And we kind of could because it's about people, you know, it's like it's people. But
Yeah.
my husband was so miserable. Like I remember him just being like, I have to sell hats online for the rest of my life. Like he was just like, this is not
Mm,
what I signed up for. And I mean, it's kind of a long story, but like when we sold our studio, we had actually I could tell you this story right now because it really
please
ties
do.
into getting this property. Okay, so we sold we sold our studio. Pete did not, and I wanted Pete to join me actually, but like when we have interviews together, he I feel like he thinks I'm talking too much, and so I get this like energy from him, and so we always just do things separately in this way.
Okay, I
Uh,
can appreciate this just to give context because I tried to get Sean, my husband, on the podcast
yeah,
once, and we tried
yeah.
to film it at the cabin, and we stopped and started it 3 times, and then eventually got so stoned that we could not do it. Like it was just our energy works in a marriage and not on a podcast. So I can
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Pete would be stopping and correcting me like every second, and I'm just beside him like we're 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 gonna get a divorce right now. Like if you keep doing this. So it's just
It's good to
anyways,
know what
okay,
works
so
and what doesn't work.
yeah, totally. Okay, so we have the studio. I was kind of just done. Like I was just to do something else. I had been teaching for so long and just ready to I was just my RPMs were like revving, you know, I really was ready to just take on a bigger project. And we had a piece of land that is like another 15 minutes up the river here. There's like this like beautiful piece of waterfront, like 40 acres of waterfront, which is pretty rare out here. Like it's a big chunk. And Pete bought that with his dad before we met, like 20 years ago, for like nothing, for 100 G's. And
40
we
acres.
yeah, with like almost 2,000, almost I think 2,500 feet of waterfront. Like it was
Oh my God.
so beautiful, stunning. And we were trying to build cabins on that. So we sold the studio and I was like, we're going to open Anupaya Cabin Co. And it was this dream of ours, and it was way more of a dream of Pete's. Like I was still kind of stuck in imposter syndrome, like only like adults could do that, you know,
Yeah.
like we can't. But he
Yeah.
really wanted to, and so for 2 years we tried to get zoning on this property, and we ran into like so many hiccups, and then we couldn't get mixed use zoning, and it was devastating, and it was right when the pandemic hit, and
Was
so
it
we
zoned
had
as residential?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
and so there was so much pushback against it, and we just decided like, okay, this isn't it, you know, which was really hard because Pete's dad died of Alzheimer's, and it was like this
Mm.
beautiful property that they had, and they had developed it so much over like 15 years. Um, And it was at the same time when the pandemic hit and our online business was dying, like failing, like it was horrific. And Pete, and we were both just like, what are we gonna do? Like this is
Yeah.
panicking. Like we're like we're living in Pete's mom's basement at the time, unfinished basement. Like we had three kids. Like it was intense. It was intense to kind of start up Anupaya. And we had this land, we couldn't get it, devastating. And then our buddy, who's a real estate agent who knew all about like our zoning issues, it was when the market started to go crazy. And before, like nobody was buying out here. Like nobody knew about Deep River, and like nobody was coming to live rurally and buy like raw land. But the market went crazy, and he knew like a retired couple from Toronto who was looking for like a huge piece of waterfront to build their retirement home. And we made bank. Like that's so we sold this piece of land that we thought we would never be able to sell, which gave, I mean, bank, it wasn't that much. It was under 500,000, but it was still gave us the chunk to put down on this place. So we literally went from like two old retired yoga teachers to standing on this beach, just like, whoa. And this property, it has 15 cabins, and it had kind of been, it was an old hunting and fishing lodge that had kind of
So it
been,
came with cabins. How did you,
yes,
hold on,
yeah,
help
and
us make the connection
yes,
between
yes,
you sold the other one and then you found
yeah,
this piece of land.
also crazy. It wasn't for sale at all. And I had previously found this place and went to the owners like years ago and were like, "Hey, sell me your land." I didn't have a penny back then. I was just like chomping at the bit for real estate. And he said he would never sell it. It's going to go to his grandson. Thanks, anyways. And then as we're talking about selling this land, I'm like walking with one of my girlfriends at night, and she says, "Oh, did you know that KO might be for sale? KO Lodge." And I was like, "What?" And yeah, so we went, and it was like it wasn't even on the market. And we got it for kind of like a good deal because they were in their 80s, American. They hadn't really been running for a few years, and then with COVID and with the lockdowns, like they weren't even able to come up. So they were just kind of ready to let it go. And yeah, and it was amazing. And so we didn't have to deal with like any of the zoning issues because we
Right.
already had the cabins. And also like there's something about this land too that we have 9 cabins like directly on the beach. Like you step off the deck and you're on sand. And you can't do that here anymore. Like you can't build on
Yeah.
that close to the water, but they're all been grandfathered in that
Right.
it's just like really, 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 really special. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we went from
Okay,
like
so when you bought
literally
it, how many
mhm,
cabins were on the land when you bought it?
15.
15. Okay.
Hmm,
And 9
hmm.
of them are right on the water. So then there's 6 that are off the water a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
you
well,
didn't
I
have to
guess 10
build
of
it
them.
all. You were kind of taking not a fully operating business because you said they hadn't been operating for a couple of years, but a business that
Yeah,
had operated.
totally. And like very, like I'm sitting in one of the unrenovated cabins right now, so we still have 5 to go.
Okay.
Um, that we don't list and we don't rent at all. We just like we let people use them for like I kind of tried to make it like a little bit cute to hang out
Yeah, it
in,
looks
but
it.
yeah, thank you. It's kind of like a little cottage core situation.
Yeah.
Um, we just use them for weddings. Like we just let guests use them for free with weddings if they book out the whole place. Um, but so we renovated all the front ones, and then we rebuilt one, and we're going to rebuild another one this fall. So some of them were like rough, like really,
Yeah.
really kind of rustic because it was a hunting and fishing lodge. It's like that's all they needed.
Right.
But we in Deep River or in the valley, like that's kind of all that there has been is hunting and fishing lodges, and we really saw a need for something else, like just a little bit more of an elevated experience just for city folk because there was really nowhere for them to stay when they came. So yeah, we've been slowly renovating one at a time. Well, we did 6 in 6 weeks, which was just the
How?
most.
How did you do that?
We did it with an immense amount of friends who came and
Okay.
basically donated their whole summer holidays to just come and help us. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was
How
so.
big were these renovations? Were you gutting them? Was it just decor? What
No,
scale of
it was
renovation?
like for those 6, it was like rip out the flooring, lay flooring, paint, all new furniture, that's it, really.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
that was just like, and then since then we started to do more. Like we put new decks on them and we're getting new windows. And so we've just kind of been doing it slowly since then. But yeah, 6 weeks to, because like we bought the place, we bought it in I think June 17th, and we opened at the end of July because we had to, right? Because they're not
No.
winterized. Like we
Yeah.
had to have a positive season on the books. Like we wouldn't have made it a year without opening. So
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was so crazy. Like I broke my toe during that time, like running around. I like kicked underneath a washing machine and broke my toe. And I just remember like I couldn't even stop. Like I
You're
just
like, this
run.
sucks,
No,
but this is going to be more
I
painful.
just kept running. Like I told Pete running past him, like I think I broke my toe and it's like all bloody and I'm still running past him and it was just like,
And he's like, get back to work.
oh God, well, no, but
I'm just
I would
kidding.
I would have been like that.
Yeah.
Fully.
We don't have time to slow down.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of been the start and it's been amazing ever since. We just passed the 3 year mark and like I said, we built a whole cabin last year. And then the plan is to kind of rebuild all of them so that they're winterized. But it's been intense, man. It's only this year that I'm starting to feel burnt out. Like
Oh.
it took to 3 years that now I'm
I was
just like,
hoping you were going to say like feeling like you're starting to
oh.
get in a rhythm and it's starting to feel like, okay, this is sustainable. This is like what it's going to look like.
It is, and it is that for sure. But it also is like because we have kept it so that we didn't like we borrowed as little as we could from the bank, and we haven't taken on any like private investors.
Yeah.
Um, it's just been us for everything,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like, and then also trying to build a resort when you're running a resort is like impossible because, especially like a place where you're trying to have no noise, like our whole
Yes.
thing is quiet and rest. So, like, we can't
Right.
be running drills or anything. So, we only have like, and also it's winter for like 5 months. So, we only have basically from April until May and then November to December to do everything.
Right. Right.
So that's been a little bit, it's just been intense, and Pete's been kind of going nonstop and me too. And I think this is the first year where we've been cautious about borrowing more, just nervous about taking on more risk. Um,
Yeah.
but I think after this season we're finally like, okay, maybe taking on a little bit more risk just so we can have help with building it because
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a pace that's like it's the best ever and it's such a gift for sure, but it's a lot.
Yeah. Okay,
Hmm.
you said you're okay talking about finances, and it's
Hmm.
interesting because
Hmm.
this season is turning into a season where we're talking to a lot of people who don't run just one cabin, but are building like a retreat
Yeah.
or an escape with
Yeah.
multiple cabins. And so,
Yeah.
okay, we know that you made like 400,000 off of the piece of land that you sold, which is like a
Yeah.
really good starting point. So when you
Yeah.
were at that point and you were like,
Hmm.
okay, we want to do something with this to build the cabins, how did
Yeah.
you start thinking through financing and ways to do that, ways to stretch that 400 as far as possible without investors, with
Yeah.
borrowing as little as possible? How did you make that work? And if you don't mind sharing how much you were able to buy this property slash business for.
Okay, so I'm not allowed to share that number, but
Okay.
let's say
Whatever you're comfortable with.
imagine it's like in between 1 million and 2 million.
Okay.
Meet there, okay?
Okay.
So, and it's 12 acres with 12 cabins plus two kind of main lodges and
Yeah.
then a 4 bedroom house up on the
Okay.
hill as well. So it's like a nice chunk of land with 1,500 feet of beach.
So did
Um,
you get a traditional mortgage then for the property, or was it a business loan?
it is okay. So another crazy thing, we couldn't go through the bank. The old owner didn't want to go through the banks. They didn't want like an environmental assessment. They didn't want us to go through anything, which was terrifying. But it was also
Right.
it was also just like a hunting and fishing lodge. So we knew like we're not buying a gas station. Like it's good to go. And so we had some friends, some like engineer friends come out and see it, and we were like, we would just buy it just for the land. So it was worth it to us. But
So it was worth
basic
the land itself was worth that amount.
the land itself was worth it. Yeah, like for
Yeah.
us. worth it totally.
Yeah.
And so it didn't matter the state of the buildings, but so we couldn't get a traditional mortgage because of that. So we had to do a bridge loan through a friend. We
Okay.
asked our buddy, who is like a developer here, if he'd give us a bridge loan for 6 months, which he
Okay.
did. And we
So
wouldn't have
that
been
also
able to.
explains the urgency then of getting it up and running so that you could then pay back the bridge
We had
loan
to
within
pay
that
back
amount of
our buddy, and like our
time.
buddy, he's a businessman. Like he was like,
Yeah.
I love you. If you don't pay me, I'm taking everything you have. Which like he's a businessman and we would never have done that. But like yeah, the stakes were high and like the pressure was on for that 6 months. So we had those 6 months to go through the bank. And we knew that. Like as soon as we acquired the land, then we could get an assessment done, then we can get an appraisal done, and we could get a traditional
Oh,
mortgage,
got it.
which is what we did. So
Okay. You
yeah,
just couldn't do it right away
we'll
because
do
the
it right
previous
away.
owner didn't want you doing any of that while he owned it.
Yes.
Once you closed
Yes.
on it, you could do all those things and then you could go through the
Exactly.
bank.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so it was great, and it was appraised at higher than we got it for, and then yeah, we just got a traditional mortgage. So we have a mortgage. Is it a commercial mortgage or is it a residential mortgage?
Oh no, I
Commercial.
don't know a lot about that.
I feel like it's commercial, and our payments are high and scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how we did it. That's how we got it. And then we sold our home also to move up here to put our money, the money from our house into the cabins, which we did, which was also kind of scary, because
Yeah.
it was like a really um just solid, stable investment having our house. And it was like, okay, kids, like we're moving into a cabin.
Yeah.
Um, but it was great. It really helped us and it helped us build and renovate. So we have like two kind of deluxe cabins that are winterized, which is what we need for this. What we need for Anupaya to really become like sustainable and profitable and incredible. And like that's something that I've really struggled with is like I want to create like really beautiful and inspiring things, and I want to like create things that matter in the world, but like you go into business to make an impact and to make a profit. Like you can't make an impact without a profit, and that's something that has taken me a really long time to learn. Like I never look at the numbers. I'm always just like, la, la, la,
Right.
la, like everything's going
Yeah.
to work out fine. But we have to winterize these cabins
Right.
to make it make sense for us,
Yeah.
since it's such a big project. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now. And then so this winter, I think we're going to probably maybe put together a pitch deck and take on some financing so that we can do it a little bit faster. Like what we've said all along, just because of the pandemic and like Canada's a shit show right now. Well, so is the States. Like it's kind of crazy everywhere. And our inflation has been really, really wild. And so we just wanted to go slow because so many people are broke, and like your vacations are kind of the first thing to go. So we were just like, okay, well, let's just go slow for the first few years. And every time we've talked about taking on more debt or taking even on a partner, um, we just always say like it's not an emergency. Like let's wait. Like let's not rush into it, because
Yeah.
you can't go back from it.
Yeah.
So and but yeah, so that's kind of did I did I
Yeah.
did I did I
Yeah.
answer
It
that?
feels like I'm
Bleh.
curious.
I'm
There,
sorry.
there, there was so much risk involved in so much of this.
Mm,
Have you all always been kind of like, okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So you've had
Zero.
that in you.
Like maybe Pete has been, if he was here, he like I want to say like there's zero planning, there was zero risk assessment. We were just like fuck it, basically. YOLO kind of. And
Yeah.
he beside me, he would be like, "Well, that's not true, like I was looking at the numbers." And like he maybe not looking at the numbers, but like he's a lot more risk adverse than I am. Like he's willing
Yeah.
to kind of roll the dice. But I mean, he's such a babe, but like the dude just turned 50. And I feel like as he's been getting older, he doesn't have the stomach for risk like he used to. Like he's
Man,
just,
do I feel that. In
yeah,
my
yeah.
20s, like, and even earlier this season, we interviewed someone who in his 20s built 7 cabins all at once on a piece of land. And it was so inspiring to hear him. And I was like, damn, this sounds
Wait,
so risky. And that's
Live
like me in
Oak?
my 40s.
Was it Live
Yeah,
Oak?
live Lake Oak. Yeah.
Oh my God, I haven't heard your interview with him. I need to because someone
It
just
hasn't
sent me
aired
him the
yet.
other day. Okay.
It's gonna
I
air
can't
next
wait.
Wednesday is his
Yeah,
interview,
cool.
and it was, like, so cool to talk with him, but one of my takeaways
Different.
was, "Man, I was like that in my 20s, and what happened? Now
Yeah.
I'm like my body feels anxiety in a different way that when we're
Yeah.
thinking about our next project now, and, like, I'm crunching the numbers so much more aggressively than I did with Cozy Rock because I'm just
It's
like, it has to make sense."
it has to make sense. It has to because like man, like I have been in business for so long and like I've created some cool shit and it's like I need to start making money. Like like so many of the projects I've made, like they're kind of cool, but like we haven't like struck it rich or anything. And it's like
Yeah,
the amount of time that you have to invest into these projects, like you need to have a return and you should have a return. And those numbers are important. So we're doing it more and more now. Like,
yeah,
but when we got this place, it was like, I mean, and Pete would not agree with me at all if I said this, but like I didn't even
that's why
really
he's not
think
here.
about it totally like stay out of it. He I didn't even think about okay, so when we got the loan, we tried to get like more from the bank, right? I was like, okay, like give us like an extra $200,000 to do some renos. They wouldn't give us
Yeah,
even a penny more. They gave us to the dollar of what we needed to cover the mortgage. And I'm actually so grateful because we actually had to pay it back. And I said to Pete, like, this whole time we've been talking about borrowing and getting as much as we can. Like, I never really stopped to think that you have to pay it back. Like, it's just like monopoly money, and yeah. So, anyways, I'm very, very thankful for Pete, but I feel like as we get older and as our kids, like we have three kids, like my son is going to university next year, and it's like there's just other things. Like I feel like we always thought like, well, we've got time for that stuff. Like we've got
yeah,
time for savings and retirement,
yep,
and now it's like, okay, our time is so precious and finite now. It's
yep.
like, what are we investing in?
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Oh,
I'm,
I'm so
I'm with
glad you
you.
shared that. I think there's two things that really resonate. And one is just your attitude of like, it's like Monopoly money. It's not real. I think so
Totally.
many of us like feel that. Yes. Yes. That is
Totally.
so identifiable. And I'm sure the business people listening are like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you people are crazy. Like, how can you be playing with money like
Yeah.
this? But there's
Yeah.
so many of us when chasing a
No.
dream,
Oh
especially,
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's not about the money. We just need to bring this to life in whatever way possible. We just
Yeah.
need to bring this to
Yeah.
life.
There's
But
money
then the
everywhere.
second side of
Money
that,
grows on trees. Like,
that's right. But then the second side of that, the older I get, the more around me I see friends being successful with their businesses, making a lot of money, like, and it does
yeah.
make me feel like, okay, maybe I need to be paying more attention to money than I have in the past because I
Yeah.
am thinking about retirement. And a lot of my friends in their 40s are
Totally.
thinking about, per what you said in your pre-interview form, of just like getting off the hamster wheel and like
Yeah.
realizing that like there is more. Hold on, I have a direct quote. You said, remember that the journey has to feel like the destination. It's the whole damn point. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm hearing my friends talk about that all the time. And they might be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm making good money, but I'm not happy doing this. I have to get out.
Yeah.
I'm going to give up my I just heard this story this morning. I'm going to give up my successful medical career to start a flower farm. Might not make as much money,
Yeah.
but like I
Yeah.
have to do something that makes me happy
Yeah.
now, right?
It's such a balance, hey, because like I have just this beautiful life where like every day is like like it's busy and it's intense, but like I could cry. It's so magical here. And like just to be able to share this with people, it's such an immense gift. Like but it also has to make sense financially. So I'm like
Right.
way over on the other side of it where it's just like so much peace and inspiration and just like I just feel stoked, I feel stoked to like get up and do this. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to like pay our bills, like Pete always says like I should have been a philanthropist. I shouldn't have been a business owner. I should have been a philanthropist, like because I'm just like sure, fine, like let it float away.
If you're dreaming about a cabin build, or are in the midst of a build, or you just bought a place and are getting ready to host for the very first time, regardless of where you are, sometimes you just need a little help along the way. shared experiences from someone who's been there, advice from someone who's learned a lot of lessons the hard way. That's me. Or a cheerleader as you finish up. All of these reasons are exactly why I started offering cabin consultations to our Instagram followers and friends who could use some specific one-on-one help. I can't promise to solve all your problems, but I can promise to be transparent about our build costs and process, our organization and project management systems, our favorite and least favorite tools for renting, how we market, and how we found ourselves with almost 80,000 Instagram followers and 100% occupancy in our first year of hosting at Cozy Rock. So if that sounds like it might help you, feel free to visit us at staycozycabin.com or on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and sign up for a time to chat there. What I love though is I'm going to pull up your website real quick, which I was hanging out on this morning. And what I love about your website is that I can tell that part of you from your website. And there's like so more than any, I spend a lot of time on cabin websites per podcast research / my own enjoyment / planning for our life. Right. And when you go to your, when you go to your about page, okay, the first thing that stood out to me was, oh gosh, it's going to take me a minute to find all these. Okay. But you scroll down and it's like our commitments. There is a whole section on your website that says our commitments, rainbow registered, a commitment to inclusivity, certified living wage employer, commitment to paying certified living wage, not 9 to 5 certified, which I'd never heard of, a nonprofit global leader in mental health training and advocacy. And then 1% for the planet, which I've heard of. A lot of folks in the Freeport area are part of 1%. And then the last one, Green Step Silver Certified Business, Sustainable Tourism. Like it is so clear that your business model is not just one of money, but you are figuring out a way to do something that's good for the world while also being profitable. Because you wrote somewhere else, like, we can't do these things for the world if we're not making a profit, right? So it's like not money for money's sake, but it's like proving that businesses can run this way.
Yeah, I think it's so, I mean, it's just, I just think it would be such a slog if there wasn't like a purpose. You know, I feel like that like vision of like what I want to create, it pulls me, like it boosts me in so many ways and gives me just like direction. And if I don't have that, I feel like my business is just like dragging me. Like I'm just, you know, it's like that analogy of a sailor, like you scraping the barnacles off the boat so that you can keep going in the right direction. It's like everything else is just like noise when you have the vision and you're connected to something bigger. And it's never been profit for us. It's like, how do we get people out in wild spaces? How do we get people to just like de-stress a little bit and just like like soften their shoulders? And like we had this doctor once who came here mid-pandemic, works at Sick Kids in Toronto, which is like a crazy hospital. And she came and she like looks at the river and it was just her. And I was like, oh, you're in a 2-bedroom? Like, is that like, did I make a mistake basically? And she's like, it's all you had available. And she looks at the river and she just starts bawling. And she was just like, and then, you know, I hear her story and it's just like the amount of stress that that woman was carrying as a doctor during COVID, like in one of the busiest cities in the world. Like that feels like such a gift for us. And that's such a driver for us of like the things that we get to experience every single day, the privilege that we have for that and the amount of gratitude. So to be able to get people out of the city to like, and another thing for me too is like, it was such an interest, like choosing to focus on a model of rest and quiet in a world that doesn't really celebrate that much. As someone who is sober as well, as someone who's battled like a lot with addiction, it is just like to be able to that's not the marketing drive for this place of like rosé all day and like drinking constantly and like it's a party. And like I'm so stoked for people who can have like just glorious debauchery in their life for vacation. Like that's so great if you want to come and do that, but that's not our focus, so that people who are looking for something a little bit different, they don't feel like it's being pushed on them constantly, because
Yes.
it is. As someone who's sober, that shit is pushed on you every place you go, every restaurant you go to, every place. And so to just have a place where people can come and just like come undone a little bit, and like they know that music's not going to be blasting with their neighbors, and that there's like real quiet time, and we really advocate for that. Like that feels special to me. That feels like it's
Yeah.
never been it's never been more needed. Like when I go to the
And
city, I
you
really feel it.
Yeah, you do such I literally screenshotted this when I was like reading earlier because I was like the way you so it's on I'm just people should check this out. You should just read the website. But it's on the FAQ page and one of the questions and I read through all of them but it says can we
Mhm.
party on the beach? And I was like, "Oh, I'm really curious how they address this."
Yeah.
And this is what you wrote. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's so well done.
I can't.
It says, unfortunately, no. We understand that some people are on vacation to indulge in some glorious debauchery with friends and
Yeah.
family. We fully support that choice. And there are so many places in the world where that is
Yeah.
embraced and celebrated, but it ain't here. There are few places left where folks can truly come to enjoy silence and stillness and quiet time outdoors. And that's the kind of experience that we are trying to create here. And
Yeah.
I just think it's so beautiful the way that you communicated that wasn't one of judgment or we want to protect our space and partying is dangerous to our
Yeah.
space. It was one of
Yeah.
crystal clear clarity about who you are and who you're for and who you're not for and that that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like, I'm so stoked on people who want that. It's not here. Also, it's just like, how do I want to live? Like, as someone who
Mm,
is walking this path of like having to fight for sobriety, I don't want to be like telling drunk people to be quiet every day. It's just not what I want. That's not the people that I'm wanting to attract into my life.
yeah.
And like, this is my life. I live here. I'm here. I
Yeah.
work 14-hour days. I would way much rather have like connections with people who are coming because like they need it, and like so many people are coming to heal. Like I genuinely get to know so many of our guests, and like they're coming to try to save their marriage, or they're coming to heal after a divorce or like loss of a child, or just like they hate their jobs, and they're like there's just a lot in the world right now. So to have a space that's like focused on, I think, just slowing the pace down a little bit is like, for me, that feels really aligned with like just the world that I want, if that makes sense. Did I just lose you forever? No. Did you go? Are you gone? Hello? Did you go away?
I got you back.
Hi.
Hi, you're
Hi.
back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But you don't have to repeat it. The good news is it's going to download on your side and my side. So we'll just edit out the pause and
Okay.
it'll be just
Okay.
fine.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you also said that in your pre-interview form, you said it helps combat my own anxiety doing what you're doing. And I feel that way about Cozy Rock because I have such intense anxiety since COVID that building
Yeah.
that space and seeing other people be able to like relax in that space helps me with my own anxiety. And you said, and creating spaces to share in that healing has become one of my greatest callings. And I thought that was really beautiful.
I like my own struggles with mental health are like vast, like I walk a line of mania pretty sharply, and just like the highs and the lows. Um, yeah, this place it's changed me forever. It's like, and as someone who's like, it's like I'm like a leashed dog, like I'm just like ready to like let me off the porch, like I'm just always constantly looking at like what's next. And it's almost like never ever enough. And this place has become that for me, where it's like
Mm.
I'm healing here. Like it's like really like I'm thriving and I'm healing, and my husband is and my children are, and it's just like reminds me, like Pete said this thing to me once. We were paddling, it changed my life forever. And it's like I want to show that to people here. Like, um, we were paddling, and like those days when you're paddling and it's insanely beautiful, like the river's like shimmering, and you're just like, what is like, how are we alive? Like, how are we taking this in? And Pete's behind me in the canoe and just like going on and on about how beautiful it is. And I turn around and I'm like, yeah, well, it's not BC. Or I said something about like, it's not this place. It's not, and it doesn't need to be BC. It could be Panama, it could be Costa Rica, it could
Right.
be like it's just it's elsewhere. And he was like, he said this old adage that I had never heard: a bird in the hand is worth two in the sky. A bird in the hand is worth two in the sky. Like, what you have in your life in this moment is worth so much more than this fucking idea of something that you have, because it's never that. Like, and then I go to those places and I'm like, oh, it's just as messed up there. Like, I'm still me. Wherever you go, there
Yeah.
you are, you know? And
Yes.
this place has really taught me that. Like, just let it be good. Like, let my life be good, you know? Like, why
Yes.
do I fight it? I fight it. So I fight happiness. And it's like, just let it come in. And we see that with our guests. Like, they're like right now, they're like all sitting on their decks. I can't see them, but I know I can see their cabins. Like, I know they're sitting on the decks, taking in the views. It's so quiet. All you can hear is the loons. And it's just like, to let to help to be like a conduit, or to like facilitate, like just like this unraveling, like rather than this tight that we all feel. And like, I don't know if everyone feels like the wanderlust or like the panic that I do. I don't think most people feel it as intensely, but I do know that people do feel that way, of like just like wanting to run, man, like wanting to go. And it's like, in my experience, it doesn't heal you. It doesn't.
No.
It's like, anchor into the ground, take a couple deep
Yeah.
breaths, like, so yeah, so that's been this
Contentment.
place for me.
Contentment, I feel like, is very hard work for a lot, not every personality, but for a lot of
Yeah,
people. And I find that, I think, in the cabin world a lot right now through all these
yeah,
conversations, and myself, this
yeah,
desire to, you create one cabin because that is your dream, right? And you either buy one or
yeah,
you build one. You're like, oh my
yeah.
gosh, this is my dream. I have a place to go and escape. And like, that is usually
Yeah.
the original dream. But then you have
Hmm.
one and then you start sharing it and you find joy in that. And it's like
Yeah,
impossible for us to stop there. I'm not speaking for everyone, but I just see this trend a lot. And so then you
totally.
see another one and another one. And I sometimes wonder, I think there are multiple reasons for this. And I have to, I mean, we own three cabins and we're plotting
Yeah,
our next project right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And part of
yeah,
what's slowing me down on that project is really doing some inner work around, well, two things, and we'll move to the next one in a second. But the first one is just contentment. What is driving this? And
yeah.
is it a feel that you need to do the next thing because this one was successful, so do another one?
Hmm.
Or is
Hmm.
it a true desire to share it with other people and create more of
Yeah,
it because this is what the world needs, right? And
yeah,
I think, I don't know that everyone is asking those same questions. I think, and that's okay. Everyone can, but I think
yeah,
it comes back to this contentment. Like, can we just be happy
totally. Yes.
with what we have and
In
pausing there?
Sanskrit, so Anupaya means the pathless path in Sanskrit. And it's just this idea of like, you don't have to follow that straight path that everyone else is, right? That hamster wheel. Like, you
Mhm.
can take turns and you can fall and stumble and scrape your knees and get back up. And it doesn't have to look like anyone else's. And
Yes.
I get caught up just as much in that hamster wheel. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
what's that quote? Like, the richest man in the world is the man who has enough. Like,
Yeah. I
stop.
know.
Like, what? Like, it's just,
We
this is,
joke about that in our house. Sean will get up off the couch to
yeah,
get some food or something. He'll be like, "How much do you want?" And I always, or I one time said this, and now we say it all the time, which is enough.
yeah,
And it's like kind
yeah,
of funny because it's a guessing game of like, how
yeah,
is he supposed to know what's enough for me? But
yeah,
in other ways,
totally.
it's like not funny. It's like, isn't that always the question? What
Yeah.
is enough? Are we
What is enough?
there? Will we know
I
when we're
know.
there?
Yeah. There's this thing. I remember hearing about it in yoga, and it's like being versus becoming.
Mm,
So how do you be in this moment in your life, in your body, in your career, in your relationship. And also you're trying to become something else, you know? It's like, but you can't let that striving take away from like being here, whether it's like you're holding a yoga pose or whatever it is. It's like, how do you be something and become something at the same time? And that's that peace, that
Yeah.
santosha peace, that contentment. And I have to fight for that. And I think
Yes.
the universe like gave me my husband for that. It's like,
Mm.
okay, this girl is going to have to fight for this. So here's a partner that just completely embodies contentment in everything he does and every,
Yeah.
like for real every day, because it balances me so much. Like, I'm like in my garden. My garden is on the river. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I'm in my garden working, super stressed about something. And Pete's like walking by me, and I'm just like, okay, blah, 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 we have early check-in. Like, okay, I gotta help the cleaners. Can you help me strip this? And I'm just like being a psychopath. And Pete just stops and he's like, look at you in your dream garden on the beach, on the river. Because I had said to him, all I ever said was like, I want to live on the river. I want to have a huge garden. All I want to do all day is garden. I want to be outside. And he's like,
And you're doing it.
can you just take a second to realize, like, I built you the most beautiful garden. We live on the beach. And it's like, thanks, babe. Like, because it's true, like, to be able to just be and
Okay,
not
but
constantly become.
yes, you are right. Does it sometimes annoy you though? Because Sean is the same way. I am so
Yes,
like you, and he does that to me. And sometimes it's beautiful, and
totally.
sometimes it's like, I need you to take on a little bit of my stress so that I have less of it, which is not how it
Totally.
works.
It doesn't work. It does not work. And it's like how I think it took me like 16 years of trying to make Pete into me, of realizing like he's not supposed to be. It's like my chickens. Okay. So we had, this is random. We had this rooster named Trouble. And
That's a good name for a rooster.
he was an asshole.
Yeah.
I hated him. He would attack me and my daughter. I hated this rooster. He was mean to the chickens. He was always like pecking the hens. And I was like, who is this like misogynist? Like, I hate this rooster. God. And it's like Handmaid's Tale, you know, like anyways, he died. He died one day. He was always kind of a jerk, and Pete was always just like, babe, this chicken is 5 pounds. Like, stop running. Stop
They're
screaming and
scary.
running.
If
And
you've
he'll
ever been attacked by a rooster, they're
yeah,
scary.
they are scary, but his point was like, stick your leg up, like it's a rooster, it's a chicken. So, anyways, he was killed. He was killed by a fox protecting his hens, because that's why he was attacking me,
Mm.
right? It's because I was going close to his hens. And afterwards, Pete was like so sad because he loved Trouble. And afterwards, he was like, he would always make me look at Rooster because look at Trouble, because he would always have his head cocked and he'd be looking around, and the hens were like just like foraging all around him, not looking up. And then after he died, Pete was like, look at these hens. And they were freaking out for weeks. Like they were panicked for weeks. And he was just like, and he's right, like a rooster is good for a hen house. The rooster was an asshole, but he was always like looking and watching them, and he sacrificed himself. And it's kind of like with Pete. Like I'm like, no, I need you to be like me. I need you to freak out too, but no, I don't. I need him to be him, you know,
Yeah.
but we try to like we both both people in the relationship want to like mold them into the
Yes.
other one. So
That's the
anyways,
work, I think.
yeah, that is the work, and I have to work at that every day
Yeah.
for
Yes,
sure.
we do
Yeah,
too. We've only
yeah,
been married 2 years, so we are still working on that and figuring it
yeah.
out. Okay, but the second part that's kind of stopped us from the next project is exactly what you said in your pre-interview form. And I'm going to read it because you said it more
Mhm.
beautifully than I will. And you said, don't try to replicate someone else's vision or personality. That's the fastest race to the bottom. Let your freak flag fly. And I think it's been stopping me that I'm like, what we want to create, like other people have created something similar to it. And I deeply don't want to replicate something that already exists. And so That means, again, more
Okay.
self-work of figuring out what is different. What are we doing that doesn't exist in the world that will serve which people, right? And I think that
Yeah,
I love what you said. I think it's hard for a lot of people to figure out like what is their freak flag? What and how much of
yeah,
that should I let fly in a world that, is judgmental and competitive, and like how do you do that? How did you do
man.
that?
I don't know. That's not something that I struggle with that much in terms of like competition. Like, I don't think anyone could ever, ever, ever create what I create. Like, I don't. And I think the same with you. Like, when you say that, I'm just like, but you're Cozy Rock. Like, what do you mean? It's so you. You are so your brand. No one can ever replicate it. Like, that's just kind of what I feel is like, if you just become so authentically you, like, no one on the planet can be you, even if they try. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think that no matter what you do, it will be you, like 100%. And I don't have the answer to that either because I also deal with like comparison. I see these
Yeah.
places that have so much money behind them, and I'm like, oh, what I could do with that kind of money,
Yeah.
like, but it's just, stay in your lane, man. Like,
I
and
know.
yeah, yeah, and just like I think too, people are scared of letting their personalities out, and I also struggle with that a little bit, I guess, but it's just like I think the older we get too, it's like, no, man, you can't cancel me. Like, I don't even care if you did. Like, I'm still going to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
if I don't resonate with you, if my business got like canceled tomorrow, I will be fine. Like, for real, I feel that way. It's just like I will go do something else that's cool, and I will survive no matter what because we always survive. Like, we think like worst case scenarios are so big, but like your worst case scenario is like you're still alive, you're still
Right.
okay,
Right.
like you can't take that from me. You're not going to ever take like this deep, deep love I have with my partner and with my kids and like this connection I have to source and God and yeah, so that makes me feel a little bit more. I still struggle with this a little bit though. Like it's not like I'm saying this almost to myself too, but it's like,
Yeah.
just be you. And if someone doesn't resonate with it, honestly, like thank you, goodbye. Like
Yeah.
it's okay, man. Anupaya doesn't, I'm not for everybody. I know that. Like I'm so stoked for people to even feel that way. It's like it's great then. Go find your other person, but I can't like try to fit myself into these like it's like that glass slipper like I can't into like boxes that no longer fit you, like it's that feels really like you're incarcerated almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the journey actually doesn't become fun. If you're trying to create something that takes a ton of work, time, and energy, and it's not a
Ugh,
reflection of who you truly are, then the journey sucks
exhaustion.
too.
Totally
Yeah,
exhaustion. Do you imagine getting up and just like pretending? I don't even have to imagine because I've done that myself,
right.
and I don't want to.
Right. I think the tricky part, I think what catches me, because I've always had a little bit of a quirky personality, and I mean, you watch kid videos and you can see that. I've never been afraid of like being
Yeah,
myself. I think it's the risk creeping in because we are thinking about doing something. I haven't talked about this yet, so I'm a little nervous. Something a little bit
yeah,
bigger because I
yeah,
love hosting on site so much, and I can't do that at Cozy
yeah,
Rock. So we're like, how do we do that? And then you see the models that are doing it really effectively and the revenue they're making, and it all makes sense, and it's a good financial move too, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
I don't want them to look like that. Like I want to do it
yeah,
all vintage. I want them all to feel different. I want every cabin to have a personality. And I think those things are all doable.
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
like, but is it riskier because there isn't a clear model for that that shows that
yeah,
people will want that? Is that just what I want, or do people want that, right? And that's where the risk creeps in and talks me out of doing
yeah.
something different because there's pattern matching for doing something that other people have done.
Yeah. I mean, what do you gain inspiration from? Because I don't gain inspiration from like the perfect
I know,
stuff
me neither.
at all, man. Like that's just, I don't feel like I belong in those spaces. Like I just want
No.
something weird and wonderful, and I
Yeah.
want to see the behind the scenes. Like I want to know the founders. I want to know the
Yeah.
people, and then with the guests too. Like maybe it's not for everyone, but I think our guests want to hang. Like I think our guests, they like that's part of it with us is like we get to shoot the shit with everybody that comes in. And
Yeah.
if, you know, maybe like one or two people you'll get a vibe like ever in 3 years that like, no, they don't even want to talk at all. And that's like great, man. Like go do your
That's
thing. But
also
most
fine.
that's totally great. But most people like they wanna chat and they want to have like a little bit of
I
a
know.
connection. And that's a tough thing as we talk about growth. Like what does it look like if Pete and I aren't Anupaya, you know, like
If
if
you need
we
a
have,
break, if your body
yeah,
needs a break, if
and
you need a
you,
break.
yeah, and that is an interesting level of trust because I am so controlling and I'm so type A and I'm so particular. And it's like I'm following my cleaners around, like, you know, making sure like the angles are right because I'm particular with my angles. And it's like, but I think that's like I think that that's a training thing. I think that you can find people that are even better than you. And that's my next goal of like trusting and then really like, but then that imposter syndrome of stepping into the role of a leader, like I can, which is that's hard for me too. That's really
Yeah.
hard for me. It's like
Yes.
Pete's like, why do you have to become best friends with all our employees? I'm like, I don't know. I love them. But
Oh my
like,
God. I can relate to this
yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
It's
that's a tough
hard.
one for me. I think that's a tough one for women because you want people to care about you and you're such a
That's
people
right.
pleaser. And it's
That's
like,
right.
what
And it
does
can be a
Pete
big
say?
mistake.
Oh,
My company
okay.
grew in the
Oh,
last 2 years, and I was managing a team, and I lost my ability to captain the ship because I
yeah,
was so worried about pleasing the people that were working for me and making the company into something that made them happy rather than my original vision and what I wanted to do. And the
yeah,
minute I became clear on my original vision, I lost our last employee. And it was like, okay, I've been just people pleasing versus
yeah,
staying clear with your vision and finding the people who want that and then
yeah.
leading, but not the people pleasing is hard. It is
It's
hard.
so hard. Pete, what does Pete says? Friendly, not friends. He's like,
Mm,
friendly, not friends. Like you can still be wonderful, but you have these boundaries. Like you don't have to take
yeah,
everybody under the wing and make sure, you know, and mother everyone. And yeah, that's a tough one for me, and that's one I'm trying to step into a little bit more because I love being an employer. Like
yeah,
I run our whole staff, and I love them so much. But moving into like almost another layer of that, where we like hiring like marketing professionals and maybe hiring a manager, like yeah, that's gonna be harder for me because I just it's a weird imposter thing that I
yeah.
have, you know,
Oh,
like why
it's
would
hard.
you listen to me? And it's like when you did that interview, who was it with
Lumen
Lumi?
camps.
Lumen Camps, yeah, and he was like hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
Like, I do the opposite.
Oh,
I
me
hire
too.
super
Story of
fast
my
and I
life.
never fire.
Story
Totally.
of my life. And then
I'd
someone
rather
quits, and
cut
I'm
my
like,
arm
oh,
off.
yeah. I'm like, I feel so much relief now that they quit.
I
And Sean
know.
goes, yeah, because you should have fired them 6 months
I
ago. And I was
know.
like,
I
oh,
know.
maybe that's why.
Yeah, that's hard.
Oh my
That's
God.
hard as a female founder.
It's so hard. Thank you for seeing that. I could
Yeah.
talk to you all day, but we
I
have
know.
4
Don't.
minutes left.
No, no,
I know. We can
no.
do this
Let's
again.
say,
Also, I've
yeah.
already added you to my list. We're planning, it's big picture planning right now, but a Canadian road trip because there's so many cool spots in Canada that I want to go visit.
Oh,
So
like
you are on the
Lauren.
list.
And Lauren, like my bestie,
Oh my
Lauren
God,
from
I love
Ford.
Lauren. I was
Yeah,
literally in my head just thinking about them as one of them.
they're like,
How close are you
they're,
to them?
well, we're 3.5 hours, but we're
That's
so
amazing.
close. Like we're besties. We are obsessed with each other.
I know
I
we
want to
are.
cry. They're
Okay.
the both of them.
Okay,
The
this
both
has
of
to
them are
happen.
so great.
I'm
Yes.
thinking it'll probably be spring because winter is probably not the best time to do a Canadian road trip. So I think I'm going to be planning it for next spring.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before you go, I do want
Please
to ask
do.
one important question that I keep forgetting
Yeah.
to ask. And when I was looking at your cabins, you have bought this old hunting lodge, right? So it has this like
Yeah.
quintessential log cabins on it. But then you're also
Hmm.
renovating and you have these newer spaces that feel a bit more modern. So when
Yeah.
you think about what makes a cabin, how would you describe it?
I was laying in bed thinking about this question this morning. Like,
I'm glad I remembered to ask you. I've missed it like all season.
um, it's interesting, especially when you put it against the new cabins and the older ones, because like the new ones don't really feel like cabins, and the older ones do.
Yeah.
I think like too, like this, like almost like a level of like uncertainty with in my mind, cabins is like, will the Wi-Fi work? Are there bears? Like, like did anything get into the garbage bins? Like that's
Yes.
in from like my own childhood and going to friends' cabins. It was
Yeah.
just like there's almost like some mystery involved in it. Whereas like the newer things are a little bit less of that. It's kind
Yeah.
of just like a house that you move that's
Yeah.
out here.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's an answer, but just kind of like some mystery and some like a level of you just don't really know. Like maybe also like kind of a letting go of a little bit of control.
Oh,
Like
I like
it's
that one.
because that's true, right? It's like,
I like
well,
both of those.
someone said like once to us years ago, um, we want to make sure that there's no mice on the entire property because I have a mice phobia. And I was like, okay, I can guarantee you that there's no mice in your cabin, but on the property, like, girl, we share, like, we're not in control of that, like we
And they were here
share this
first.
land with animals. Exactly.
That's
Like,
right.
so you kind of have to let go of like the really tight grip with the cabin and
Yeah.
just like go with it,
Yeah.
go with the
That's the
flow a little bit
adventure.
more. Yeah, totally.
I
Totally.
like
So,
that. Oh
final
my gosh.
answer.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with
No,
me.
it's so great to meet you. And thank you just even for wanting to hang and wanting to
Heck
have us.
yeah.
Really, really appreciate it.
This was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, let's keep in touch for real.
Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.